KFAN Wild Weekly, a Wednesday night hump day all across the great state of hockey. And I think folks are a little groggy right about now. Kevin Falness with you, along with my co-host on Beyond the Pond every Saturday morning, Mr. Pat Micheletti. We were talking a little bit off the air, Patrick, about the late night start last night. They dropped the puck on that thing at 10:15 in the Central Time Zone. Be honest, did you make it to the final whistle?
I did not make it to the final whistle. I dozed out, came back. So technically, I guess you could say I did.
Yeah.
But Kevin, I mean that's just ridiculous. Just think of the people on the East Coast
Yeah.
who wanted to tune in. I mean that was a 11:15 start for them. So, but it is what it is, and they played the game, and the result that we wanted happened.
It was, and what a great start to the series. The series is tied at a game apiece. Not best case scenario, but pretty darn close. It would have been awesome to come out of there with a sweep, but the Wild get it done. And basically, if you sat through the first period and a half, you knew what that outcome of that game was going to be. I know they made it interesting late,
Yeah.
but you got through that first 5 minutes of Vegas throwing everything at
Yep.
you. Gustafson up to the challenge, and then bang, just like that, the Wild are up 3-0. What a start to the game.
Yeah, and the ebbs and flows of a game. People get frustrated sometimes at just the different nuances in the game, but I you got to give a lot of credit to Minnesota when they had the opportunities, they converted on them, and you get a lead on the road like that, and hey, the game didn't look pretty at times, right? And Vegas came back and had territorial advantage, but the bottom line is, they didn't score, and that's all you're looking to do, and Minnesota accomplished what they wanted to in the first two games, and that's winning one on the road.
We knew that the star power was going to be big in this series, and everyone talked about the
Yep.
depth there on the Vegas Golden Knights as probably being a difference maker. But boy, I mean, we'll talk about Boldy and Kaprizov, but what the depth players are doing on Minnesota, the Hartmans, the
Yeah.
Folignos, man, they're having an impact, Pat.
No, well, 100% they are, and that's been one of the successes of Minnesota all year is buying into what the coaching staff wants them to do, and yeah, some nights you're not going to have it for whatever reasons, but for the majority of the time, they always work hard, and they stay on script, and so. I thought they did that in both games, in this series thus far, and it's hopefully going to bode well for the rest of the series.
I sometimes question the NHL stats, the stuff that happens in because it's somewhat subjective. But the hits thing, for whatever it's worth,
Yeah.
11 hits for Marcus Foligno in Game 1, and then another 12 in Game 2. I mean, it feels like we're in the days of Cal Clutterbuck, where they're just throwing their body around. I don't know if it's legit or not, but 23 hits through 2 games is an incredible number.
Well, that's what Marcus does. That's what his role is. If you expect him to get the puck and go through four or five guys and get a goal, no. What's his job? Let's analyze his job. He's got to play tough. He's got to be a big body. He's got to hit. He's got to get to the front of the net. Where did he score last night? Right in front of the net. So that he knows his role, and he's playing at a very, very high level for his role. Okay, and so just like we can talk about other guys and what their responsibility is. You look at Hartman, and why is he playing so well? Well, what does he do best? He agitates. He gets in, and he's a pest, and yet he has enough skill also to produce offensively. Not a ton, but enough. And so, you got to look at what that player does, and is he doing that to the best of his ability?
Yeah, Hartman might be the biggest reason why the game turned on a dime. The Golden Knights
Yeah,
throw the first 5 shots on Philip Gustafson. He comes up large, but then the biggest offensive opportunity, in fact, their first shot on goal after 5 minutes in goes
yeah.
to Ryan Hartman, and things start to avalanche in that direction.
Yeah, for sure, and and that's what he does. And you know what? You just look at his eyes and look at his focus, and he looks like he is so dialed in to what he has to do. And you know what? He plays one of those games, Kevin, that is hard, and he knows it's hard, but he's willing to get in and do it, and he doesn't back down from it. And we always talk about going to hard areas and making a tough play. Well, he's doing that right now, and him and Felino together are somewhat reminiscent of the old, what they call it, the
They
Erickson.
call it the grief line. I called it the freak line
Yeah, okay,
with Greenway, Foligno, and Erickson Ek. Yep.
yeah, and just it's almost like a line that you don't want to play against, because that getting any ice and having any freedom is going to be hard, and that's what they're doing, and then they're also chipping in offensively. So you hope that continues throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, and not only that, to salute Ryan Hartman because he is playing discipline, and
Yeah,
that's a big
right.
factor as well. He likes to play on the line, and right now he's not going over it. Enough about the depth guys, though.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those bright, shiny
Yeah.
objects up front. That top line has been prolific. I know Matt Boldy's had his detractors here and there over the course of the season. They're awfully quiet now, Patrick.
Well, and rightly so. And again, it really irritates me that think about it. Think about it when Kaprizov was out, when the three defensemen were out, when Eck was out. Matt Boldy played every night, and yeah, maybe some nights he wasn't his best. But I tell you what, where would this team be without him in those times? He led the
Yeah.
team, and with 71 points on the year. And maybe yeah, sure, there's times where you try to do too much because you almost feel like you have to. And but regardless, I'm a big Boldy fan, and he listen, what he did. I mean, we can talk about the pass that Kaprizov made, which was,
And we will.
nobody can make that. I mean,
No,
or
that was
yeah,
sick.
there's probably a few, but not many, and it landed right on the tape. But then to have the presence of mind of Boldy to know that he's got a guy right on him, to be able to handle the pass, still maintain his focus and control, and beat Aiden Hill. Vegas on the bench must have been just like, you've got to be kidding me,
Yeah.
because that was all world in both those guys.
I said on Twitter that that pass was like a quarterback hitting his receiver in stride and just made it so easy. They put it right in the bread basket. And you're right, Boldy had to pull off the finish move on that play, but
Yeah.
the pass by Kaprizov to hit him in stride, just that saucer lob pass over the middle. I mean, that's just borderline. And you know what is even better? I mean, that is the only thing that would top that pass that he had to Boldy in game one.
Kevin, I had to just get away from all social media and such when I saw the people talk about Kaprizov only having one shot in game one. The impact that he makes every time he's on the ice, whether he shoots, whether he doesn't shoot, he is doing something. And I just, I get a little upset because I know the bar is high for him, and people
Yeah.
expect him every time he gets on the ice to score a goal. I mean, which is just not reality, but he has been fabulous in these two games.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that was worried about the rust factor at the end of
Yeah,
the regular season, because he had that great game against San Jose, and then it kind of tapered off, at least from a statistics standpoint. And you could tell he was probably a little rusty
well,
still,
sure.
but that feels like it's gone away now, Patrick. I don't think there's anybody worried about rust on Kirill Kaprizov.
He is so dialed in, and I know Bruce Cassidy made the comment that he's never seen a guy work harder on the second and the third try. I mean, he does not give up, and he is so difficult to take the puck away from. He's I have no words for him.
On the other end for the Minnesota Wild, again, this is Pat Micheletti. Welcome to KFAN Wild Weekly. We're getting you ready for Game 3 tomorrow night. The series shifts to St. Paul. Puck will drop at 8:20 in the Central Time Zone. Not perfect, but it's better than 10 o'clock for sure. Our coverage starts at 8 o'clock on the Fan following NFL draft coverage. Let's talk about the line juggling of going into game number 2. Marco Rossi stayed in the lineup, but he flipped spots with Ryan Hartman. I listened to John Hines earlier today with PA, and he makes a good point that for Marco Rossi, it's his first trip to the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's thrown into the fire, and he's getting a little bit of a reset by, decreasing his role a little bit, but has no doubt that he's going to have an impact on this series. What'd you make of the move for Rossi, and what do you think about his status here going into this series?
Well, here's what I think on Marco. Yes, this is his first playoff series. I think having him, me personally, I listen. John Hines, Bill Guerin, the whole organization, their goal is to win a game. They are going to do what they think is the best thing for them to win a game, and to win a series and to move on. A lot of people think that, oh, they've given up on Rossi and this, that, and the other thing. I don't think that's the case at all. I do think Marco can help in this series. It wouldn't shock me, if they maybe moved him to the wing, to play him in certain situations, because let's not forget what he did during the season. He was quick. He was around the puck. He was around the net. He wasn't afraid to get there. A lot of his goals came from 2 or 3 feet out. Personally, I think this is a difficult series for him to play center in, just because there's not a lot of room. His defensive responsibilities are monumental as a center, and playing down low against those big, heavy forwards of Vegas make it really difficult. And so I think they have to find a way to get him more time, to get him more space, to get him around the net, to be kind of unnoticed out there and not be the foray, in the kind of thick of things. And if they can do that, I think they're going to need everybody. They're going to need everybody, and they're certainly not quitting on Marco Rossi. I'll leave it at that.
How about Zeke Buium? I know you were a big proponent
Yep.
about him hopefully getting into the season finale. Didn't work out, but he's been thrown into the deep end here for the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs. 19 years and change. I can't imagine being thrust into that situation. How have you think he's handled the pressure of the first 2 contests?
I think he's handled it just fine, Kevin, and I think I think they're using him properly, and I think eventually he's going to get more minutes as it goes along, as he gets more comfortable. Listen, when there's times in this series where Vegas, just because, is going to have the territorial advantage in the offensive zone. And so the ability to be able to get the puck out of the zone, I think is going to be a factor going forward. And his ability to skate, his ability to retrieve pucks he's going to get more comfortable. This series, we have to talk about Z William because he's new and he's in the lineup. But this series isn't going to be determined on how Zeke Buium plays. It doesn't come down
Hopefully
to
not.
one. It doesn't come down to one guy. It
Yeah.
really doesn't. And so, but I'm perfectly fine with him.
Meanwhile, for the Vegas Golden Knights, they were probably feeling pretty good after game 1. Of
Yep.
course, they got the victory. It's not like they blew the Wild out of the barn. It was a close affair, basically a 1-goal victory. But you go into last night, and despite the fact they do score a couple of goals, I noticed Jack Eichel off the score sheet. Not even a shot. He attempted 5 shots, not a shot on goal. 16 and a half minutes of ice time. Can that be right? So, and a -2 overall. What are they doing so well to limit Jack Eichel?
Well,
We know how good he is.
yeah, well, when X out against them, they're
Yep,
credit.
that's the
Yep, and credit RD are doing a really, really good job. I mean, Eichel has the ability to carry the puck. He's got that long reach. He's very methodical, and I think Minnesota's defensemen are closing on him right away, not giving him any opportunity to make a play. And if he doesn't make a play, guess what? Mark Stone is not going to be in those areas where where he's going to get it and finish. And so I think they've done a good job of defending him. Now, I think Eichel's going to get a little upset, and when he gets upset, he starts playing. And so you can't take your foot off the gas when you're out against him.
Well, we know this much. Tomorrow night, it's going to be nuts at XL Energy Center. Game 3, as mentioned, the series shifts to St. Paul. What are your expectations? I mean, that's what this is. It isn't a one and done. It's a chess match over the best of 7, and I can't imagine that Bruce Cassidy is just going to say, well, we lost game 2. I think they're going to bring their best punch there, the counter punch to St. Paul tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think it's important for Minnesota. I've stated this. To me, and by the yes, they've out hit Vegas, but they're not going to beat Vegas by trying to outmuscle them. In my opinion, yes, continue to hit. That's always part of the game, and you need to get your presence that way. But Minnesota was really good when they beat the Vegas defensemen and their forwards to the puck. Once they did that, they played faster. They made Vegas kind of look around a little bit and made it really difficult for them. And so I hope they continue to do that. And when they do that, execute again on their opportunities. We're going to see Vegas a lot in Minnesota's zone and get the territorial advantage. And so Minnesota can continue to defend like they did. Don't get too upset if Vegas has that advantage. But ultimately, Kevin, it's the scoreboard, right? And so, just continue to execute when you have those chances.
What a fun start to the playoffs
Yeah.
it's been. We were outside of the party looking in last year, but the Wild are back and they'll get their first home game coming up tomorrow night. That'll be game 3. Game 4, a matinee in St. Paul, and it's going to be a whole lot of you and me. People are going to, if they're not sick of us already, they certainly will be on Saturday.
All day, you and I. You got
pretty
it.
much. Beyond the Pond from 10 to noon, extended pregame starting at 2, puck drops just after 3 o'clock, and then Wild fan line that afternoon. I was going to say that evening, but it'll be just early afternoon. What a perfect way to spend a Saturday.
Yeah, you'll be buying me dinner, maybe breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
I'll get you a gift certificate at the Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. How about that?
Right, I'm still waiting for that one. It's only been 10 years, but or longer. Yeah. So yeah, we look forward to it. We're gonna have EJ Raddick on Raddick from the NHL Network. He'll have a lot of insights into all of the series. So we'll have him on Beyond the Pond, and so we'll have a good group of guests, and it's going to be a fun day.
Patrick, we'll see you this weekend, and
I'll see you tomorrow night. I'm going to come and see you tomorrow night. You got it.
Awesome. We'll see you in the Bob Kurtz Radio Center. That is the voice of Pat Micheletti joining us here on KFAN Wild Weekly. Quick break, and then we got one more segment to wrap things up. You're listening to KFAN.